They faced the steel of their enemies, the harshness of the elements, and the absolute certainty of death. But ancient soldiers reported facing something far worse: creatures of pure nightmare.
From the deserts of Persia to the darkest European forests, their journals and strategic maps mark beasts we now call myth. These are the top 10 creatures ancient soldiers swore were real.
We begin with the most famous yet often misunderstood threat. Number 10. The dragon.
For European armies, particularly those traversing deep caves or mountainous regions, dragons were not metaphor, they were powerful siege weapons.
The Romans recorded encounters with giant serpents and flying beasts in Dacia and Sarmatia, often conflated with modern dragon imagery.
Centurion reports detailed hides impervious to conventional weapons and terrifying shrieks that routed entire formations.
In the Middle East, the serpentine wingless dragon was a symbol of chaos, requiring specialized units or heroes to defeat.
Imagine the terror. Fire from the sky, or a beast powerful enough to collapse fortified walls with a swipe of its tail.
Many historians believe these sightings were exaggerated reports of crocodiles, large pythons, or even geological phenomena.
But for the soldiers who carved its image onto their standards, the dragon was a very real enemy, a military hazard.
Their existence was factored into campaign strategy, avoiding certain regions during nesting season or preparing large-scale traps.
The legends persist because the fear was visceral, documented across vastly different cultures and timelines. A foe that demanded immediate, overwhelming force or calculated retreat. Next, we delve into the deep jungles of India and the treacherous mountains of Persia. At number 9, we find the apex predator of the East, the Manticore. Mentioned extensively in the writings of Critias and Pliny the Elder, the Manticore was terrifyingly efficient.
It was described by soldiers stationed along the borders of the Achaemenid Empire as having human intelligence and a bloodlust for flesh.
Its most feared weapon? The poisonous spines that could be launched from its tail, piercing armor with lethal accuracy.
Reports detail how manticores hunted silently, often stalking patrols and picking off scouts one by one.
This wasn't just folklore. It was a security threat that impacted supply lines and morale.
Some theories suggest the Manticore was a description of the Bengal tiger, heavily exaggerated, or perhaps even a hyena with rabies. But the descriptions of its human-like face and voice, crying out like a trumpet, cemented its mythological status. A creature that speaks and stalks. Pure psychological warfare against isolated units. Tactics against the Manticore involved fire and coordinated spear walls, focusing on protection from aerial attack and ranged spines. It served as a grim reminder that not all battles were fought against men. Its legend traveled westward, instilling caution in any soldier ordered east. Our next monster demands a naval transition, sailing into the terrifying waters of the Mediterranean.
At number 8, the Cyclops. While often confined to Greek myths like the Odyssey, soldiers frequently recorded run-ins with gigantic, primitive beings on isolated islands.
These were not gods, but terrifyingly massive savages, capable of crushing men and ships with ease.
The single-eye description may stem from ancient Greek and Roman soldiers finding the enormous fossilized skulls of Ice Age dwarf elephants.
The size and scale of these remains validated stories of island-dwelling giants in the minds of the superstitious crewmen. Military necessity dictated avoiding islands rumored to harbor these behemoths, or preparing sophisticated ambushes if engagement was unavoidable. They were treated as a natural disaster, capable of wiping out entire landing parties before they could establish a foothold. A soldier's account often focused on disorientation. The giant's simple presence rendered tactical planning useless. The key vulnerability, passed down through generations, remained the blinding of the singular eye. This was military intelligence disguised as folklore,
a weak point to exploit.
The weight of the Cyclops stories highlights the precariousness of ancient seafaring and exploration.
Leaving the Aegean, we turn our attention north and east toward the Scythian lands, where gold and blood were found in equal measure.
At number 7, the protector of priceless treasure and a military deterrent, the griffin. Ancient Greek and Roman soldiers reported the griffin from encounters with Scythian nomads who described them as guarding gold deposits.
These winged beasts, fiercely territorial, represented a massive threat to any unauthorized mining or treasure hunting expedition. A soldier's manual detailing northern campaigns would certainly warn against engaging this creature, citing its speed and power.
The griffin myth is often tied to fossil discoveries, specifically the remains of Protoceratops dinosaurs.
The beak, the 4 legs, the prominent frill, easy to interpret as a mythical hybrid by men unprepared for paleontology.
The creatures were seen as aerial threats, capable of diving from great heights, snatching equipment, and even small men.
Their inclusion in military lore shows that resource acquisition often meant facing mythical guardians. Scythians deliberately exaggerated the danger of the griffins to discourage encroachment on their territory and wealth. For the soldiers, whether exaggerated or not, the threat was documented and believed. Caution was paramount. It's a perfect example of how ancient militaries integrated local legends into practical risk assessment. Transitioning now back to the heart of classical Greek warfare, where one monster defined true endurance. At number 6, the Hydra of Lerna. While classically tied to Hercules, the Hydra represented an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means. Ancient generals used the Hydra as a tactical nickname for guerrilla forces or rebels whose defeat only sparked stronger resistance. But soldiers swore there were literal, multi-headed serpents living in the marshlands, spewing noxious venom. The swamp gas and volatile chemicals found in stagnant water may have caused hallucinatory or poisoning effects, leading to the legend. The Hydra's resilience demanded coordination and specialized tools, namely cauterization, to prevent regrowth. Military formations were taught that simple hacking was ineffective. Persistence and fire were the only path to victory. The Hydra was the ultimate symbol of the enemy who never stays beaten, a constant drain on manpower and resources. Its venom was reportedly so potent that even its breath was lethal, turning battlefields into no-go zones.
These swamps were marked on maps as treacherous, biologically hazardous areas, requiring wide detours.
The lessons learned from the mythological Hydra were critical for unit morale and strategic caution. Now we transition to a creature feared across the whole of the Roman Empire, found in humble places.
At number 5, the basilisk, the king of serpents.
This creature, often said to hatch from a rooster's egg incubated by a snake, was believed to have 100% lethality.
Roman legionaries encountered reports of this creature in North Africa, where indigenous peoples claimed its gaze could kill instantly. Soldiers who survived encounters recounted colleagues instantly petrified, turning gray and cold. Modern theories suggest the basilisk was a highly venomous cobra, perhaps spitting venom or simply striking with such speed it seemed instantaneous. The antidote? The weasel. Ancient reports confirm weasels were used by Roman scouts to flush out and kill the beast. The other solution, a mirror. The creature's fatal stare would be reflected back upon itself, a tactic taught in basic survival training. This is a creature that required specialized, non-conventional countermeasures. Normal swords would not suffice. For any soldier clearing ruined settlements or marching through dry lands, the basilisk was an ever-present, silent killer. Its myth cemented the belief that the deadliest enemies were often the smallest.
Moving now into the extreme edges of Roman exploration, a race of beings that blurred the line between man and beast.
The cynocephali, the dog-headed men. These creatures were widely documented by explorers and soldiers returning from India and North Africa. They were described as highly organized, living in sophisticated nomadic groups and capable of using fire and primitive weapons.
For armies, the challenge wasn't just defeating them, but determining if they were men to be conquered or beasts to be exterminated. It is highly likely these accounts were deeply prejudiced descriptions of foreign, perhaps masked, tribes. But the accounts detail soldiers engaging in fierce battles against these beings who communicated in barks and howls. These creatures instilled a profound fear of the unknown, suggesting the very limits of human definition were porous.
The existence of the cynocephaly justified harsher treatment of enemies on the frontier, deeming them subhuman.
Their reports influenced cartography for centuries, warning future armies of man-beasts lurking in the wilderness. Next, we soar to incredible heights, following the reports of ancient mariners and desert travelers. The roc, the colossal bird of prey. Documented by explorers like Marco Polo, the roc was a creature of myth for soldiers traveling the Silk Road or maritime routes. Its wingspan was measured in dozens of feet, capable of snatching elephants and sinking ships. For ancient navies, this was an aerial bombardment threat, demanding that valuable cargo be secured and ships disguised. The belief likely stems from huge, powerful eagles, or perhaps exaggerated accounts of extinct massive birds like Apiornis. Soldiers reported seeing the bird's shadow eclipse the sun, causing immediate panic and disruption to formations. The sheer scale of the roc made any traditional defense against it impractical, demanding evasion, not confrontation. Its nests were described as fortresses of debris and bone, filled with massive, irreplaceable eggs. A truly terrifying environmental hazard for those operating far from civilization. Our final two creatures are pure terror, ancient weapons designed to inspire awe and paralysis. At number 2, the Gorgon, the petrifying horror. While Medusa is the most famous, the Gorgons were a race, often depicted as frightening, winged females with brass claws. For Greek and Roman soldiers, encountering a Gorgon meant immediate death, not by spear, but by a stare that turned flesh to stone. The mythology became a symbol of debilitating psychological fear, used by commanders to caution against panic. The strategic countermeasure was taught universally: never look directly at the enemy. Use reflections, mirrors, and flanking movements. The fear was so potent that Gorgon imagery was often placed on shields, the aegis, to instill terror in the enemy. The myth may stem from encounters with highly dangerous animals or diseases causing rapid physical decline. But for the ancient soldier, the Gorgon was a real tactical threat, a creature requiring absolute discipline to defeat. The ability to freeze an enemy column was a horrifying power that generals had to account for in close-quarters combat. Finally, we plunge into the deepest abyss, examining the creature that terrified all naval powers equally. At number 1, the sea serpent, or kraken. Every major naval force, from the Phoenicians to the Vikings, recorded encounters with immense ocean dwellers. These were not merely big fish. They were ship destroyers, capable of wrapping coils around the hull and dragging the entire crew down. The historical basis is likely encounters with giant squid or whales, creatures far beyond the ordinary scope of naval experience. Pontoppidan's accounts in the 18th century continued this tradition, describing creatures so large they were mistaken for islands. For ancient soldiers transporting troops or engaging in sea battles, this was the ultimate environmental warfare. The loss of a galley and 200 men to a kraken was treated as a legitimate military disaster, impacting strategy and supply routes. Crews developed massive harpoons and specialized consecrated weapons just to engage this type of colossal threat. The sea serpent was the untamable force of nature given a terrifying, conscious form. Its very existence challenged the supremacy of human naval power, a humbling, horrifying reminder of oceanic domain. These 10 creatures were more than bedtime stories. They were intelligence reports.
They shaped where armies marched, how navies sailed, and what soldiers expected to face on the battlefield.
The line between the mythical and the mundane was erased by the fear and necessity of survival. The age of these monsters may be over, but the legends of the soldiers who faced them live on forever.
Did any of these creatures surprise you? Which historical monster do you think has the strongest basis in reality?
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
If you are hungry for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history and mythology, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now.
We explore new, untold stories every week.
And if you enjoyed this cinematic journey through time,
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.